This episode is brought to you by the Sasquatch Flag Company. The Sasquatch Flag Company is a family-owned business in New England that builds hand-carved American flags from seasoned white pine. Each flag is hand-built and each star on the flag is hand-hammered and chiseled. No two flags are alike. They offer a variety of flag designs to honor the police, military, firefighters, dispatchers, and search and rescue personnel, to name a few. These stunning handmade flags look great in an office, a studio, the back porch, or above the fireplace mantle. They make the perfect gift for the veteran, first responder, or patriot in your life. Now, I love these flags, and I've been giving them as gifts for years, and I was a customer long before they became a sponsor of the show. I can't recommend them enough. So if you're looking for that perfect, uniquely American-made gift to give away, or if you want to treat yourself, go to SasquatchFlags.com and get your order in today. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Clint Ladine. Dr. Clint is a leadership and success coach, author, and former professional basketball player. He is the author of Power Coaching, Stand Out, Get Unstuck, and Energize Your Leadership. In this book, Clint shows leaders how to unleash their full potential and the potential of their teams through power coaching. And I am excited to have him on the show to help us understand this process. So, Clint, welcome to the show.
John, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's good to meet you. And we had a nice talk before we got started. And you're a doctor of strategic leadership, and I am in the program to become a doctor of strategic leadership. So my hat's off to you. I know how much hard work that is. And so, yeah, congratulations on that for sure. And so someday I'll be Dr. John, but you're Dr. Clint already. So I'm excited to have you on the show and learn from you.
Well, thank you. I'm believing for strength and wisdom through the process for you. I know it's a lot, but excited for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, well, I wanted to talk a little bit about your background. I mentioned that you were a former professional basketball player, but I wanted to just understand like how your background led you to want to help leaders.
Yeah, I think it starts post-basketball career. I was working for an organization here in the city, San Francisco, California, and they had given us some executive coaching. And a lot of people in our organization were a little bit apprehensive to take it. I took it. I wanted to learn and grow. But to be honest with you, John, when I first got it, there was a lot of hubris in my life. I really thought, I've been in this industry 5 years. I've already had my master's degree, and I thought, what could this guy possibly teach me? What is he possibly going to show me? The short story was that this executive coach came in, and it was transformative for my leadership trajectory. It ended up having an amazing impact on our organization, cascaded all the way through, and just help us grow by leaps and bounds, increase revenue. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to learn more about coaching, what this is, and because everybody needs to have some of this in their life. And that's what spurred me on to go back and to get my doctorate in the field of strategic leadership and executive coaching. And I thought, man, everybody needs to have some of this.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And it's interesting because, everyone I talk to has a different moment where a spark hits. And it's interesting that your story is the spark was actually meeting a leadership coach and learning from leadership coach and having the lights go on and go, wow, this is transformative, as you say. And so it's interesting that was the spark that led you down this path to where now you're doing this as a career, which is really exciting and interesting. And it's great to know that there's that, as far as our listeners are out there, you might be moving down a certain path in your career, but watch for those sparks because they can send you in an interesting direction. And it's exciting to see that you found that career choice through that one spark. That's very interesting.
Most definitely. Yeah, it was exciting and really transformative for myself and our organization. Highly encourage everyone to give it a taste.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about your book. It's called Power Coaching. And I was really interested when I looked through the material. So when you wrote it, who was the book primarily for, and who do you think will benefit most from the book?
Yeah, this book, I think people will love it if they are leaders in organizations. I think also entrepreneurs, solopreneurs will really appreciate it. And also throw in this caveat, parents as well. I have a chapter dedicated for parents about some of the principles of coaching, how it can help raise kids. I have 5 kids myself, have used coaching in my parenting as well. But it really is for people that want to grow their organization, that want to increase revenue. I really believe that coaching is a key component to achieving those things.
That makes a lot of sense. So explain to us what power coaching is as opposed to maybe coaching.
Yeah, power coaching, I think, takes it another step further than regular coaching. So coaching, you're always trying to get people to perform, to get to their best. Power coaching, I think, goes a deeper level, a next level, where you as a leader and a coach are really concerned with the personal and professional development of those that are following. And so oftentimes, I think as leaders, we know we have to perform, right? We have metrics that we have to hit. We have goals that we got key performance indicators that we got to hit. But deep down, power coaching is about evoking awareness in the people that are following, really digging in and finding out what motivates them, their desires, their passions in the workplace, and then helping to come alongside of them and develop those. Because ultimately, when we are concerned as leaders with developing the people that are under us, we're going to see their performance increase, we're going to see deeper engagement, and we're ultimately going to find our organization healthy, flourishing, and thriving.
That makes a lot of sense to me. You know, having been in the trenches for 30 years, I've always believed that if you can find what motivates your team members and you can put them in a role where they can be their absolute best and they're doing what their dreams are, and that's, you know, working towards a common goal as a business, that's when the magic happens, when everybody's sort of aligned towards an overall objective, but they're doing something that they deeply desire. They're doing their dream. They're the head of sales. That was always their dream, and they're doing that job, and it connects to the bigger mission. Then I've always felt like it's exponential in terms of what happens. There's a magic that happens, and it doesn't, you know, I've run a lot of businesses and it takes a while sometimes to get all that flywheel going. But once the flywheel goes, it becomes like everything sort of becomes easy. It's a flow state. You've heard the expression of flow state, but as a business, you get in a flow state. I notice when everything is aligned. And what's interesting to me is that not many people talk about this. We don't talk about this enough in leadership and in management and in MBA programs, for example. Why do you think we miss out on this idea of engaging and getting the most out of people?
Oftentimes, I'll start with one thing that I've noticed, and I'd like to hear from you too, John, if you've noticed this in your career. A lot of times it really takes humility from the leader. And so it takes 2 things. It takes humility and it takes time. Time to really get to know the people that are following you, time to dig in and to find out what are their dreams, what are their goals, what are their desires, where, you know, find out some of the barriers, the limiting beliefs that they have, and really dig into those. And then secondly, it also takes humility, because as leaders, it's very scary to let people shine and to let them excel, and even to let them go, you know, shine a little bit more than you. Most leaders, that is, you're putting them in extreme discomfort. But I really believe that next level leadership, when you have the security in yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to let you fly. I'm going to keep pushing you up. I'm going to keep developing you. I want to see the best for you. And that takes another level. And when you do that, man, you're going to, like you said, you're going to see the flow. You're going to see that flywheel, right, begin to just turn on its own. But exercising humility and listening to those that are under you is a difficult task oftentimes.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what you mentioned And I saw it a lot in my corporate days. Is a lot of the leadership decisions are fear based. It's
Mm,
fear of being not looking smart, fear of someone getting the spotlight and not me, fear of missing a bonus check, fear of looking like stupid. And so fear prevents us, I think, sometimes from being humble and being able to listen and giving power to the
yeah,
people that we have working for us.
yeah. And let me do a basketball analogy, and I'm just going to do kind of a left-handed comment, kind of crazy talk. But I'll use it for basketball. Okay. Sometimes as coaches, right? Right. And I'll just use a high school setting or whatever setting. Okay. We're really concerned with the record, right? But I just want to posit this idea. The idea of really letting your team develop and really letting them make a few mistakes here and there within reason, right? You have to excel, you have to do things, but letting them try moves that are uncomfortable, letting them shoot Curry-like shots, and really get out on the edge of where they are comfortable. And perhaps you might lose a game or two, but at the end of the season, does anybody care if you're 18-14 or or if it's 20-16? It really doesn't matter. But if you have poured in and allowed those individuals to excel, I think there's something powerful in that. And I think it's a paradigm, kind of a paradigm shift of, like, to your point, hey, could it be that maybe I let this person speak at this event instead of myself as a leader, right? Of course, as leaders, there's always times where we got to speak. Or could I let this person take this lead, knowing that, hey, you know what, we might not hit this or that. That's a very scary area to be in, but I am just kind of thinking that, getting to that point where we're pouring into people that much is a kind of revolutionary idea that I think a lot of leaders need to begin to explore, especially as we're seeing these changes in the workplace.
Yeah, yeah, that is really powerful. The idea of controlled failure is a powerful teaching tool. So when we allow people to do something difficult and have a failure and to learn from that failure, they're going to be better off than if we prevent them from ever having that failure. And it's one of the things I talk about in my books. One of the things they did in the Navy really well is they put us as junior officer of the watch, and you had a senior watchstander, and they threw every casualty in the world at you, and you couldn't handle it, and you would ultimately fail. And then we'd stop the drill and we'd say, what'd you do wrong? And it was like, oh, it's very emotional when you fail. You learn from that because you never want those feelings again. So you're willing to do anything to learn. How can I not allow that to happen again? And that's when learning takes place, when you have those opportunities to fail. But as you say, a lot of leaders don't want that. They want everything to be perfect. So they don't give people those chance to step out and maybe not be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a scary place to be at. And once again, for us as leaders, another great place to be is, right? Because then in our discomfort, we continue to grow, right? We learn that, because a lot of times as leaders, we want to think we control everything and that. And so in that, we continue to grow as well. They continue to grow, and, everything keeps moving up. Whereas if we're just the ones, that are experiencing that, it keeps us muted and at a certain level.
Yeah, yeah. So true, so true. You touched on this, and I wanted to talk about it. You mentioned I was looking through some of your materials. You said that this idea of limiting beliefs, and you said, so I was going to ask you, what's the difference between a limiting belief and a realistic outlook? How do we have to deal with this idea of limiting beliefs that may stop us from growing?
Well, a limiting belief, tends to focus on the negative aspects of a situation that we're going through, and they ultimately can hold us back from our full potential, right? When we're talking about us as an individual or as organization. Whereas a realistic outlook, right, is more positive focus. It understands, it's a balanced approach, but it allows us to make more informed decisions. And a realistic outlook, we will continue to move forward on it. Whereas a limiting belief will prevent us from moving forward at all. but a realistic outlook will take that balance approach and continue to take appropriate action. And I think we see this a lot in our businesses, in our individual lives. And the way you can kind of notice it is when you say a sentence or an idea and it's followed with the word because. And typically, if that because is a limiting belief. So it'll be something like, you know what, I possibly couldn't lead an organization because I don't have this much education, or I've never done this before. And I'll share with you a story about, kind of early on, one organization that I was with, where I was able to overcome a limiting belief. I was with a nonprofit here in the city, and we had this, I ran a rescue mission there. And so we had a service every morning. We'd serve breakfast, we'd give an encouraging word. And I remember one day, this gentleman came in and we're serving and we're giving an encouraging word to them. And he's got this big gash on his head, big old cut. And I thought in my head, all right, we got all these job employment opportunities. We can pray for him. We can get him involved in a social service, but what's going to help this gentleman's cut? And I just was prompted to, you know what, you need to start a clinic. You need to start a clinic. But here's the thing, John, is the things that popped in my head is I don't have the space. I have no medical experience. I have no equipment. But I knew that I was supposed to start this clinic. So the realistic outlook, right? The limiting beliefs would have been all those things. You don't have any space. Okay. But then the realistic outlook, right? Of, hey, keep moving forward. So I thought, what do I have? I have a box of Band-Aids. Okay. Other things I thought, what do I have? I have an office. I go, maybe I'll move my office down in the basement. Move my office down in the basement. That became our clinic. What do I have? I have a phone and emails. I'm going to start calling doctors and nurses in the city and see if they'll volunteer an hour of their time. Short story, from that box of Band-Aids and a call here and there, 5 years later, that would end up a licensed clinic in the state of California. All because, right, it could be truncated by a limiting belief, but a realistic outlook. Okay, what do I have? And so for our listeners here, what do you have in front of you, right? What can you do, right? You've led, organizations, you started your own company, right? And I'm sure you've experienced some of those same things where you're like, okay, I don't have everything I need, but you began to put it into action.
Yeah, I really like that, and I do see that we tend to quickly write things off, like you say. I have no medical knowledge. I don't know what I'm doing, so I should just ignore that and move on. But when you say, well, what do I have and what could I do? And it's like, then you start, and I think that's the same thing with a small business, right? We didn't have the deep pockets that my competitors have, right? And if you come into my factory, you'll see a lot of equipment that's pretty amazing. You're like, that's really cool. Well, it's kind of all homemade, and we sort of had to be, because the what we really wanted was like $150,000 piece of equipment. What we have is a $1,200 piece of equipment that we custom made, and it works great. Right. And in the back of my mind, I say at some point we're going to have a nice piece of equipment, but right now we have what we need to make the product and get the product out the door. Right. Yeah, that's exactly. Do what you can with what you have. Right. Keep moving forward, even if even if it's not perfect. Right.
Yeah, great wisdom. Yeah. And we see so many people often in businesses that, at the side of the road because of those limiting beliefs, and because they, lack that persistence, but yet, right, that continued movement forward is key, and a key principle for leaders as well, right? Despite the staff that you have, you might be frustrated with them. You know what? You keep developing them, you keep pouring into them, right, and keep adding at the right times. Typically good things happen.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the things I talked about with these college students today. I taught at the NC State University, the little leadership thing, and I told a story of my worst sailor on board and how he became my best sailor. And one of
Really?
the
Okay.
reasons was because we were deployed, and so you're deployed with the people that you're gone for 3 months. They lock the doors, they lock all the, and you're stuck with the people you're deployed with. So in the business world, we might write somebody off or let them go or move them to another department when we have a problem child. But in this case, I had to figure out, like, okay, this guy is a problem, but why is he a problem? And I learned that he was bored, and so every time he was bored, he would get himself in trouble. And so one of the things I had to find is, like, what excites him, what was his passions, what kept him less bored. And it turns out that he was one of my best sailors, and he was so
Amazing.
smart that a lot of the basic things that we did every day bored him, and so he would get himself in trouble. And so, but I think it's the idea of working with like, I couldn't replace him, so I had to work with what I had. And here I had a problem sailor who ended up, was really good, but I had to learn who he was, and I had to learn what made him tick. And that was a big part of, like, turning that situation around, because I had no choice. I had to work with him.
That's fantastic. How did you learn that boredom was kind of the thing that was kind of preventing him from excelling? How did you kind of uncover that or unearth that?
Well, it was a pattern. So
Yeah.
because I stood, one of the things about, the submarine navies, you stand these long watches with people, and so you get to know them, and you you learn about them. And I stood the mid watch with him, and midnight, from midnight to 6 in the morning, not much happens. We're operating a nuclear power, plant at sea,
Yeah.
and I would see he would get bored. He would start taking the panel apart. What are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm bored. Like, why are you bored? We're standing watch. But you could see, you could learn from him. Just watch him. He would just, the more he get bored, the more he would
That's
get himself
great.
into trouble. And so I think, but I like the idea of that. Even when it comes to people, it's like, what can I do with what I have, the resources I have in front of me, to be able to get it done? And in our case, on a submarine, you couldn't get another sailor. You had to use
Yeah.
what you had with,
Yeah.
that you deployed with.
You know what? As you're telling that story, another podcast that you have to do is ways to get in trouble on a submarine. Because, right, those that have never been on it were like, how could you get in trouble on a submarine? But I bet
Yeah.
you have so many stories. That would be a fantastic podcast to have people come on and tell their stories of how I got in trouble on a.
It's a very unique, strange group of people that go under the ocean for long periods of time. Let's just say they get in trouble.
Okay.
But so, and so it kind of goes to my next question, because I think you talk about it in the book, which is, like, how can leaders uncover this untapped potential in their staff and their teams? So you talk about it. How do we do it? So like you said, if we do that, we end up having a better business, but how do we go about doing that?
Yeah. Keyword: listening.
Mm.
Taking time to listen, and questions, really getting in to ask questions. And I'll even frame it with this, because you've been in corporate world, and to go beyond a simple question. So you've probably been in one-on-one meetings, John, and it goes something like this: hey, how do you feel about everything going on? The person will give you the corporate talk. Oh, it's going fine. I'm okay. They know how to talk the language. They know how to be positive when they need to be, right? But as a leader, a key point, if you want to take it to the next level, is to go deeper with 2 or 3 follow-up questions, right?
Yeah.
About a certain issue or thing, that's kind of open-ended questions, like, they might say, oh, it's okay. Well, and you might, dig into that. Well, I noticed that, this piece of equipment wasn't working up. Are people on the floor finding that frustrating? Or, it seems like, our team has, operated a little bit more, effectively in the past. What have you noticed that helped us operate more effectively? Maybe some more corporate, talk, and then, but just keep going in and begin to listen and listen to some of those key things that they're saying. And when you do, you're going to begin to uncover things about them. If you then take it on a personal note, like, Hey, tell me about when is John at his best?
Mm,
It's a great question.
yeah.
When is John at his best? He'll answer. Tell me about, where does that come from, John? Was that something you saw your mom and dad did, right? Why is that important to you, right? You like to do public speaking? Tell me about that. Do you like people that, see you afterwards? Do you like the rush of when you get up in front of people? Tell me more about that. And you begin to go in, you begin to find out, right, those wirings and, right, those motivational levers. And then you're able to find things within your organization that's heading towards the goals you have, get them in alignment with that. And then, like we talked earlier, get them plugged in and begin to let them flourish.
I love that. And as you're talking about that, the one thing that keeps screaming in my head is if you want to do that, you have to be present. You actually have to be around. You have to be where your people are. You have to talk to them. You have to listen to them. You can't be in your office. You can't be on your phone when they're around. You can't be in meetings. I'm too busy to spend time with you. And that seems to be a problem in especially what I saw in corporate is the managers were too busy to spend time with their people, and so they miss out on that rich tapestry of knowledge and experience and desires that exist within their team. So, right, am I
Yeah, and
approaching this right? Because that's what I'm screaming in my head is like, be
yeah.
present. So
Yeah, and that's why I'm a big proponent of, embedding coaching into your whole organization, right? When it gets embedded, not just with the top team, but when you use that and then you begin to teach middle management and then lower, right, people on the floor, some of those principles as well. And you'll notice them talking, you'll notice them asking open-ended questions, right? You'll notice that becomes part of the culture because you're right. If you're running, the top person can't do that with everybody, right? You can't spend,
yeah.
45, 50 minutes of listening or talking and, right, really finding out. But it's something that, if you get kind of embedded in the culture, you modeled up top and it begins to cascade down, you can really have an impact on the culture and engagement.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. And yeah, it's sort of like one of the questions I had to you, and it sounds like you answered a little bit, which was like, how does coaching help inspire and motivate employees? And I think you just touched on that, right? So you're actually engaging, you embed that coaching mindset within all your staff, right? At that point.
Yeah, most definitely. And you can just think about it, right? Think about this, John. How many times in your life has somebody just sat and listened to you, right? Maybe if you've gone to therapy, you got some of that, right? And some therapists like to talk a lot, some listen, but when you think about that, think about how many times somebody has just listened to you without judgment, without trying to get something out of you, right? And really, and then, partner that with somebody that's in your corner that says, you know what, I want John to excel. I want to help him overcome barriers. I want him to help overcome obstacles. I want him to be, successful and flourishing. If we were fortunate, maybe we had a good home, maybe we had a dad, right? 50% now population shows us that otherwise. And so if you can imagine if somebody has somebody like that in the workplace, and it's transformative in our kids' lives, right? We see the research, how much in our work setting as well, when people are like, you know what, John really cares about me. Yes, he's got to hit his numbers. Yes, he's got to hit, right, his KPIs, but he's concerned about me as well. Man, you know this, right? From being in the server, they'll run through a brick wall for you,
Yeah.
right? And get things done. They'll be like, yeah, I'll stay late. Yeah, I can do a little bit more today. Yeah, no problem. Let's go.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, and I was going to ask you that in terms of like, we're seeing a lot of this quiet quitting. We see a lot of people coasting. We see a lot of people now, Yeah, we used to call it retired on active duty. So they're there, but they're not really there.
I've never heard that. That's good.
So, but how do we get them? How do we re-engage them? How do we inspire them? How do we get past this? I'm just here checking in. I'm just clocking in and clocking out. I don't want to get involved in this high level of disengagement we see in the workforce. 70% are disengaged. How do we change that?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be this paradigm shift, and it's going to be a lot of the principles that I just talked about. And I really believe that, because just look at the workplace now. People, before, we used to have to be there 9 to 5 in the place, corporate setting, right? That has totally transformed, right? Never, people our age, you are the same age, similar age. I never thought that was possible. When they first started telling us telling people you got to go home, I go, there's no way that's going to happen. That's
Right.
impossible, right? That's just my old mindset, right? And now I'm like, oh my gosh, it is. People are still flourishing. They're still getting things done. So in that vein, I really think there's going to be a paradigm shift, because going back to the old school, us Gen X, right? It would be like, no, I'm the leader. I tell you what to do. This is how it's done. You get in line, right? And stop complaining, right? All the Gen X stuff, right, that we did. I think it's going to be some of the principles you talked about, where, hey, I really want to be I really want to be in your corner and help your career, Barbara, Johnny, whatever it is. What can I do to come alongside of it here with what we have, what we're doing, the different type of tasks and roles, right? Not everybody can be the president. Not everybody can have these, but how can I come alongside you, get you some of these, and be in your corner to help you excel professionally and personally? It's kind of, counterintuitive to a different way of doing things, but this quiet, quitting, this coasting, it's real and it's happening. And, people, they need to be engaged, and they're kind of waking up and say, I can find some places where they are really have my best interests at heart.
Yeah. Great advice, powerful advice. That's really good stuff. So, what final message would you like to leave with the leaders that are listening in this conversation? If they're hearing this message and they want to, what final word would you like to leave with them?
Keep pushing your people up. Yeah, allow yourself, take that, allow yourself to have that humility, and see where you can help somebody else to excel, right? We all know, right, the good one, treat people how you'd want to be treated. Sometimes we get into leadership and those things go by the wayside, but really see if you can get to the point where you're really concerned about them and can push them up, and see how much you can continue to lead. You're always leading, but see if you can keep that humility in check and see how far you can push it.
Great final thoughts there. Pushing your people up, continue to push your people up. I love that. That's fantastic. The book is Power Coaching Stand Out, Get Unstuck, and Energize Your Leadership. What a fantastic resource. Highly encourage that listeners, you check it out. Clint, how can people find out more about you, your company, your services, and this new book?
Yeah, they go to the website, successfullycoaching.com. The book is available there, and also on Amazon as well. Also on social media, Instagram, and all the likes there.
Okay, very good. And we're going to put links in the show notes for all those resources. And again, leaders, check these resources out. If you really want to get the best out of your team, if you want to avoid quiet quitting, the coasting, as we talked about, this is a great way to do it. Get your team engaged. And the way you get engaged team is for you to be an engaged leader. And this book's going to help you do that. Clint, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all this information and talking us through this idea of power coaching. I think it's really fascinating, and I think we can all learn from it.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks again. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.